we always say in our locker room that pressure is a privilege. That's something that's always said before we go out. What a chance, what a great opportunity to go out and do this together.
We had the privilege of sitting down with the coach of the #1 ranked high school basketball team in Utah's largest 6A class. Coach Doug Meacham and the Herriman Mustangs are in pursuit of a state championship. And Coach Meacham was kind enough to discuss what kids and parents can focus on to give them the most enjoyable high school basketball experience possible. Coach Meacham is a legend in Utah basketball, having played for American Fork High School, Snow College, and the University of Utah. He was a grad assistant under the one and only Rick Majerus. Coach Meacham returned to his high school, American Fork, where he coached for 16 seasons. He then coached 5 seasons at Snow Canyon, where his 2022 team won the state championship, and he was honored as the 2022 Coach of the Year. Coach Meacham is in his second year with Herriman High School and is the 2024 6A Utah High School Coaches Association Coach of the Year. This is voted on by the coaches and one of the greatest honors a coach can receive. Doug has had 28 former players go on to play at the next level, with 3 more current players currently holding college commitments or offers. All right, I can't think of a better person to have as our guest here on this podcast than Doug Meacham. Thank you for taking this time to sit with us and chat, and we have some questions for you. We both have sons, so his is 10, mine is 9. You've met Jared, and Jared's goal in life is to make it to the NBA. And so going through the realities of what that looks like, I've told him, let's make a varsity high school team first. So you being a high school coach, a legendary high school coach in the state of Utah, we want kind of your opinion on, for parents and kids who are 9, 10, getting up to kind of the middle school age level, what should they be doing? How can they prepare, and what expectations should they set for themselves as this starts to happen in their lives?
Yeah, I think that's, thanks for having me, by the way. This is an awesome opportunity, and I really, I love working with youth and watching them strive to reach their dreams. I'm a high school counselor as well, and so I'm always asking youth, what do you want to be, what do you want to do? And every time they say something, I just encourage it and give them, here's some options and things to do. So in the basketball world, of course, you have so many that's their dream. And I would never tell a player not to go that route or look towards that, because the process, the work towards it, is what's special. And, to see your son show up in the mornings and just come and get some shots, the time he gets to spend with dad, I mean, those are the things that matter in the end.
Yeah. From a high school coach's perspective, what kind of skills or talent base should these kids be working on at 9, 10? Again, they're young. I just worry because you see so many parents pushing so hard. But as a high school coach, as kids come into your system, what do you think or hope the baseline of skill set is?
It's a great question, and I would say, your basic skills, dribbling, shooting, passing, but one of the skills that I think that is the most critical that gets overlooked is being able to catch the ball with vision. We call it catch and peek, and what that does is it allows you to catch the ball and see your teammates. Most young guys, when they catch the ball, the first thing they do is just boom, the eyes go down, and it becomes about my world. And the first thing we'll say in camp is, everybody take a look at this floor, describe it, say what it looks like, how does it feel. Now you never have to look at it again. And so, because when they learn to dribble with their eyes up, now they have a chance to be more than their world right there with the basketball. And now they can see their teammates. They can foresee a trap. They can foresee an open teammate. So that's a simple drill that we do is called momentum change, momentum stop. We call it mo stop, mo change. And what that entails is running down the floor, passing to your teammate, catching with elbows high and strong, protecting the ball, but with vision, looking towards the basket where their goal is. And that helps them to be more successful at those younger ages.
That's such a relevant point, and Eric here is the coach of Jared's team, and it's so often we get them dribbling to that right corner. Like, everyone just funnels to that right corner and just they're focused in on that. So with these kids and these parents, what advice would you give to the parents of their children, and how involved and how hard to push these kids if the goal is to have them love the game and make a varsity basketball team.
Yeah, that's what you hope and you want, is for the game to remain fun. And you have to kind of look at your own kids and what can they handle. And parents generally have a pretty good feel of what is a good balance. And at the end of the day, if it's about, did you have some fun? Did you learn? What did you learn? Asking those questions. I think sometimes you see so many of those car rides, and now with social media, you see them almost make fun of those car rides home. And those can be so critical, because if they dread getting in the car after every game, the game stops being fun. And so as hard as it is to be able to say, let's talk about it when he or she wants to talk about it, and to say, hey, I really enjoyed watching you play. Those are the magic words from what I've seen and what I've observed. The parents that are able to give encouragement, put them in situations where they can have success, they can be around good players or see what good players do. I have a son that's a sophomore, and I keep saying to him, watch so-and-so, watch Carlo Mulford, watch Cale Barkley, watch what they do after practice, watch what they do when they first come into the gym, because they have ingredients and elements of a successful player. And I think that's watching good players and being around them is an important thing. So putting them in camps, to go and associate with a college player at a BYU, a Utah camp, there's lots of those opportunities. There's a great organization called PGC Basketball that preaches fundamentals, preaches being a good teammate. That's one of the most recommended paths for a camp that I would suggest, because they teach great principles. If you follow them on social media, they're just one, as a coach, they're just really good about how they approach it with young players especially.
Coach, no doubt high school basketball is a contact sport. How can we help develop tougher kids early on?
Sign them up for wrestling.
I think you might be right.
I think sometimes that's innate. Sometimes that's what they just come out being tough. Sometimes they're the youngest sibling and they've had to fight for their food at the dinner table, and they're just that kid.
Yeah.
But I do know you put them in competitive environments, and it's a balance, because you don't want them going and getting, beat up so much that they become discouraged. But I think anytime you can put them in a competitive environment, that can start to develop, because most kids want to win. But there are some that there's other things they'd rather do. And then you foster that and move them in a different direction.
Yeah.
I think that this is applicable for all age groups, but I know this was a trait of mine growing up, but also of Jared, my son, is he's this perfectionist of if he doesn't make 9 out of 10 free throws, his world is over. So as a coach, how do you facilitate that, again, whether they're 9 years old or they're seniors in high school, the idea that making mistakes isn't necessarily bad. It's kind of the overall goal here of what we're looking for.
Yeah, I remember John Calipari saying to his All-Americans when they came to Kentucky, guys, welcome, I'm glad you're here. We got to start making some mistakes and do them quickly. We have to start figuring out what we have to work on. And so as that message gets to young kids, that this is a game of mistakes. There's never been a perfect game. I've never coached a game where there's been 0 turnovers. So who has the ability to go to the next play quicker than some others? And that is something you have to talk about and develop. We talk about their response, their body language after a missed shot. Do your shoulders go down? How do you look to your teammates? Because if you show weakness, if you don't show strength, then I may not pass you the ball in that next opportunity. And it's even high school, it's hard. I'll have sometimes a player that'll say, hey, take me out. I'm not doing well. And at that moment, I'll probably take him out, but we'll talk about it. And the fun thing for me is when I get to watch that player maybe the very next day see that confidence back. And that's what, everybody goes through those times. And even when they go to college or the NBA, you hear about their sophomore slump, their challenge when they get to that next level. How do I handle those little confidence things and challenges? And I've heard a great thing saying about confidence: the things that develop confidence are what you think about every day and your preparation. And if you've been preparing, you've been in the gym when no one's there and been taking those shots, your confidence is just going to grow. And then what are those things that you're thinking about, every day? The positive self-talk is huge in today's world, especially.
Coach, if I'm an aspiring middle school basketball player and I want to get the coach's attention, the coaching staff's attention, that, hey, I'm hoping to play at this high school one day or play in this program, what are some things that players can do to stand out?
That's a great question. I think those things of, are you a good teammate? Do you show up? Are you there? We talk about, to be early is what we prefer, and then if they're late all the time, it's not acceptable. We want players to, during the game, do they know who they are? And it's okay if your skill set right now is you're a great rebounder and you struggle at shooting the three. Do you know that? And are you willing to kind of step back and allow the better shooters at that time to take those shots while you keep improving, working while you're waiting? That is something that I think is important, is that self-awareness. And that's hard because sometimes you may have an uncle or a trainer that's just telling you that you need to be getting 20 shots a game when, you know what, there's 3 other guys that have better percentages and give the team a better chance to win. They maybe should get more of the shots if you want to win. And I think other things that you can show as a young player, are you a guy that comes out of the game and gives high fives? When you come into the game, do you give energy? Is it positive? I saw a video about Steve Nash. They counted how many times he gave high fives. He was a great MVP, in the NBA. And it was over 200 handshakes, high fives in an NBA game. And those are the guys I want to coach that are going to lift other kids around them. And that's a gift, a skill that can be developed and help a player, through his career.
That's noticeable too. I mean, we've been watching several of the games in just your region, and you can see it on certain teams where the team, you can tell there might be something behind the scenes that isn't quite right, or other teams where they're just supporting each other. And I kind of want to transition to that into kind of the rise of the AAU basketball, right? Where it is that get your own shots, perform in front of people in a different way. Whereas growing up, it was kind of the junior jazz circuit, and then you have your super league teams, and now we've got the Bantam program coming into your schools. So how does that all look as a high school coach? Do you hope they do come up through your Bantam program? Does AAU make you a little nervous sometimes? Where would you kind of want your son to be playing as he's coming up through these?
That's a great question. AAU has its place. I mean, I would have loved back in the day to have so many opportunities to go to some weekend tournaments and play. But every kid's a little bit different. I had one dad just recently say, what do you think the best for my son? I've got these coaches calling me, and AAU coaches and programs, I mean, you're paying a good amount of money. And sometimes to travel to an Atlanta, Dallas, and some of these places, unless you're a really high-level player, you can get just as much out of doing some great skill development and having some games that are local. There's great teams here in Utah, and you can drive to Utah County, you can drive to North Salt Lake and have some competitive games and get the feedback that you need in games. And so, it's hard because I'll have a player who's a good player, but his coach is telling him certain things, and I feel like sometimes as coaches we have to retrain these players about how to play in the team structure. You're going to be running a few plays, and you're going to have to be in a stance and defend a little bit longer than you do at an AAU tournament. And so there's elements to it that are hard. You can't replace the opportunity to go and be in a game setting and have to have the game on the line and that pressure. I mean, that's a really good thing that you can put your kids into is, okay, figure out how to win that game when you're down 4. And so there's so many things with that. And like I mentioned, the time that you get to spend with your son or daughter at a tournament. You know, I go back to my wife traveling with my older son, McKay, and those are special times of getting to spend with him, you know, on a team. And I would first really look at the coach, look at what they talk about, what do they preach, is it a philosophy of playing the right way, and does it match? Sometimes in the high school, that it may be a little bit different than what you're hearing in the high school program. I had a Gonzaga assistant coach come to me as I said to him, how do you handle these trainers? Because there's so many, and what do you recommend? He said, it's hard because we had a player that was going to come back and be a solid player for us, but the trainer kind of wrecked his skill set. He became more ball dominant. He had to have the ball in his hands, and he wasn't great off the ball. And that was pretty eye-opening to just hear it from a high-level college coach.
Coach, just generally, how do you build a program, a youth program that feeds into your high school?
You have to be aware of who they are. You have to find out which coaches, who's been coaching at the lower levels, and you know, I think that's something we didn't do it a lot early when I was coaching, but it's had to kind of develop, and it's been a part that I've really enjoyed, to watch some young kids in third grade struggle and not know how to play together, but then by the end of the year, as they've put in the time, all of a sudden, man, they look like it's like a team. And that's been special. And you have to find out which coaches can work well with the youth, and you hope to put in a position coaches that understand the big picture, you know, that they're about going and getting an ice cream after the game, and understand that we're going to keep this fun, but we're going to be consistent. I think that's what youth basketball has to be, is we're going to try to have at least a couple practices a week, and we're going to lay a format for communication with the high school coaches. I have a few of my assistant coaches that coach a younger team, just because I hope to have a voice with some up-and-coming players of here's what we talk about, here's some of the drills that we do. And so if they came to one of our practices, they would be like, well, we're doing that same thing in our practice. So I think that's a good thing. And so for parents to find out with their coach what they're doing with those teams is a good thing. And some coaches are more involved with it than others, and it's different from program to program.
This is a perfect segue into, okay, we've kind of come up from the youth, now we're into middle school, and now we're getting into high school. So they've come through these programs, they're playing on teams, they've got your attention, and now they have tryouts. Yeah. So what do tryouts look like under your tutelage, and what are some of the terms that they need to know, basic terminology? What are some of the drills that they can expect in tryouts in order to perform kind of to their potential?
That's a great question. A lot of times when we do our summer camps, that's kind of here's a handful of the things that we do at tryouts. So when you see the kids coming to a tryout setting, they've done some of those at a camp. And I always tell players, especially in high school, tryouts aren't just in November. Tryouts are from March to October. November always asks, what did you do from March to October? And you can always see examples of players who have put in the time, and it matters. What are they doing in the off season? And even those multi-sport players, some of my favorite players to coach will show up to an open gym wearing their football pants, and they're coming over and shooting free throws on the side, but they're connecting with their team. They're getting shots up. They're letting their team know, hey, I'm still putting in some work. I'm playing my other sport right now, but I'm connected. And we have a player this last year, JJ Tomsic, who came to me and said, I really have a chance to go play golf. I think I have to take this year off. And we had an upfront conversation of, well, here's how it might look. You've got other players that are going to be getting better while you're gone. But if you keep practicing and shooting and doing those things and stay connected, you know, you obviously can get back with us in the spring and summer and have an opportunity, and he did. I've never had that in all my years, a player do that, but he got his golf scholarship to Utah Valley, and he's helping us win this year. And so love to have multi-sport guys that are about the team and do what they need to keep progressing.
Eric and I kind of had a conversation beforehand of, can we ask this question? And that is, do you kind of already know the team once tryouts come along? And I think you kind of answered that with tryouts aren't just in October.
Yeah.
But are there ever any surprises that kind of hit you during tryouts?
I think more of the surprises might be with your younger kids. I mean, you may have a kid that's moved in, and all of a sudden in tryouts, it's like, whoa, he's played, he's been in a program, and they maybe didn't make contact with you when they first came. And so some of those are more surprises than others. Your varsity levels, you're still sometimes making some decisions on, player 8, 9, 10, and having conversations with coaches. And those are some tough ones, a lot of times. But you generally know your main guys that are going to be playing as you've played 30, 40, 50 games through the off season.
If I have been cut as a freshman, a sophomore, is it worth it to me to come back and try out again?
Yeah, I go back to my junior year. I was devastated when I got cut at American Fork High School. Back then they posted the list, and I remember telling my friend, will you go down and don't come back if I'm not on the list? And he never came back. So I walked straight to my truck, and I remember how I felt, and I remember going home, and I said to my mom, what do I do? And she said, I'm sorry, but, go to work, was her words. Go to work and make it next year. Make it so they can't cut you the next year. And so it's all, I have a lot of empathy for players that get cut because I experienced it. But I also realized I wasn't the player that coach needed or wanted me to be that year. So I went to work and played, had opportunities in the spring and summer to play, and was fortunate to make it the next year. And that's always a challenge. I think for me, the process of going to open gyms, you're still making progress. You get to play the game of basketball. Basketball is great. As you know, you can play when we're old, and you keep making friends. You keep doing those things with the game of basketball. So everything you put into the game, even if you did get cut, it can still be a fun part of your life. And the work part, that's our team theme this year is let's work. And I think that's something that we forget, that the process of trying out, doing something that there's some pressure is a privilege, and you get a chance to do something that's hard. And so I would always encourage those players to have a conversation with the coach, find out what they need. You never know in today's world. A kid may transfer in. Those change things all the time. And so dynamics of teams change even more so in today's time than maybe in the past.
Doug, did you play basketball at the next level after your time in high school?
I did. I was down at Snow College before I went on a church mission. I came back and there was a coaching change. But then afterwards, I ended up walking on at Utah just for my final 2 years as a junior, senior. And I knew at that time when I'm there practicing, it was a Christmas Sunday. I was looking around thinking, what is going on? I'm here on a Christmas Sunday. But I was enjoying it. I was loving it. Coach Majerus, it was like an encyclopedia laid out every day of basketball. I was learning, and I knew that I needed to do something in the world of basketball. And at that time, it was just a great experience to be in one of some great teams that were NCAA tournament teams. And so I had a great opportunity to be around great players and great coaches. And so, and then I was a grad assistant for him as the year after. And then I had to kind of make a decision of, do you want to stay in college or do you want to go into high school? And I remember seeing kind of the hours and the time that they were putting into. For me, it was I wanted to have a little bit more of a balance with family and that kind of a thing. And so I chose to go back to my high school, and fortunate enough to replace my former coach there for a good amount of years there.
I think that's pretty amazing, though. You don't play your junior year. You come back, you make the team as a senior, and then you continue on to play at the next level. Obviously, you were a multi-sport athlete, but that's quite an accomplishment.
It was a fun and just a great opportunity, and I'm grateful for those chances.
What would you say is some of the, as you jump up in levels from freshman teams, sophomore teams, JV teams, now varsity level, and even onto the next level, what is the difference in that? Is it necessarily all talent, or is there other things happening there?
I think sometimes it depends on the team you go to, the fit. That's an important thing. There's a mindset that I think is pretty critical of a confidence that, hey, I can play with these guys. And I think that's by putting yourself in positions. Now, for example, we had an Ike Palmer that's playing at CEU. He was very under-recruited, and as we watched him in practice, our coaches were like, he is skilled. He's a good player. He can score at all three levels. And I think just for him to go and maybe play in a powder league, to go and play with former college players in an open gym setting, now all of a sudden, hey, this guy's playing overseas, or this guy's playing there, and he's successful and doing great. I think that's an important thing for those guys going to that next level, is getting those opportunities to grow their confidence and mindset.
What can a player do on your team to get more playing time?
I think that skill of being really good at who they are. I had down at Snow Canyon, I had a player that struggled with shooting. He wasn't the best three-point shooter, but doggone it, he was a great defender. He would go get us those tough rebounds. And, in a state tournament setting, he hit some big free throws that helps us win down the stretch. And so I go back to that player. He was so fun to coach, and because he understood that, and he wasn't coming to me after games and saying, I'd like to shoot it more, because he knew what he really was great at. And that's to star in your role. I mean, that's what I would say. If you want more playing time, star in your role, and the role may change. Sometimes it changes and grows through the year. And the next year, your role may be different. But your role, our last game, we had some bench guys that have been the best cheerleaders on the bench come in and help us win a big game when we had a few players down. I was so proud of them being ready, of coming in and doing what they do really well.
I loved what you said about knowing your role and owning your role, and not everybody on the team's going to shoot the same amount of shots, right? Everyone has different percentages and different talents, but everybody can rebound, right? Doug, tell us about your run at Snow Canyon.
Just an awesome experience. We went down, and when we first went there, I went into an open gym and was kind of watching and thinking, we've got some work to do. And it was fun, the process of it. It was a great experience for my boys to meet new friends, to go into a different setting, and they had to kind of relearn how to make friends and teammates, and I think just that experience was great. There's a saying down there at Snow Canyon, there's magic in the green and gold, and I never thought I'd like the color green, but it grew on me. There were some great people, some of my great friends and coaches down there and administrators. Just a positive experience to watch the process of guys get better. And ultimately we got into the state tournament and played well and had a team that was really competitive and won down the stretch. And to win one down there was a special experience. And I've been fortunate. I've had great players. And any coach knows that you have to have great players to be successful. And it was a fun run.
My dad would always tell me that to win a championship, it takes a little bit of luck, and everybody has a different whatever luck means for people. But a ball bouncing the right way, or a buzzer beater goes in or doesn't go in for the other team. Did you experience that, and would you agree with that sentiment of to get all the way through a championship? Some things do have to go your way, and maybe the best team doesn't always get there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in that year we won it. We happened in the semifinal game. we had a buzzer beater. We were down, and all of a sudden one of our players, our football player, point guard Will Warner, got a crucial steal at the end, and he goes and he makes a pass to a teammate who shoots it and misses it, but we had a teammate there, Lyman Simmons, that's there at the rim and puts it in at the buzzer. And so, yeah, there's some things that, you can call that luck, but I also know that that particular player did the exact same thing in a tournament up here at a Riverton tournament against Kearns in a championship game. And so I had seen it done, and I had seen these guys figure out how to win when they were down. So there's preparation that comes in that luck as well.
Can we transition a little bit to other coaches? And I know you don't want to give your secret sauce away, but at Snow Canyon, I looked back, and it seems like there were a couple years that were a little bit of a struggle, and then you build the program to where you win a state championship. So for coaches that are coming into a new program for the first time, maybe they're having a really hard first year, they're not winning, the talent level isn't where they thought it would be, or they just don't know the same philosophies that coach has. What advice would you give to coaches that maybe feel like they're failing and they have this imposter syndrome of maybe I don't know what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think to me it was the work had to be put in. There had to be a consistent, we're going to get into the gym and we're going to do these basic drills like I mentioned, of learning how to catch the ball and see your teammate, learning how to play the right way. I mean, there are some habits. There's a saying that I really like, that in moments of extreme pressure, people revert back to their innermost deeply held habits. And so when you get into a program, what are the habits that the kids have? And that's what you have to determine and say, well, we're going to have to start building some of these habits, because right now there might be some players that are tunnel-minded and they're not trying to play the right way. And so you have to be patient. You have to go and say, put in the work and make the gym available. I think that's an important thing. And it's hard in today's world of getting into the gym with all the different programs and different sports. But I think if you start at those younger ages, especially 7th and 8th grade, being involved, knowing that, okay, here's what we have to kind of work on and build, those teams have a chance to be special as they've worked together, a good core of them, and even the kids younger than them or older than them, there can be a good mix of kids that can figure it out.
Eric and I, we both have sons that play early youth basketball, and we're at the high school, and so many times in a 6A program, for those of you listening, that 6A is foreign. It's basically the largest size high school in our state. But you have volleyball taking time, you have wrestling taking time, you have cheerleading taking time, and so many other sports. It's tough to get into a gym, but certainly your players are putting in time outside of just the high school gym.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty special group that I get to coach now. We'll finish practice, and then I'll say, where are you guys going? Well, we're heading over to the church. And I'm like, well, we just had a 2-hour practice, and, well, that's just kind of who they are. And so that, you don't get that every year. And so that's something that great players figure out, that I've got to, because in a practice setting, you're doing a lot of team things. You're doing a lot of how do we handle this zone or man, and the skill and the work. If a kid's struggling with his shot, he's getting in the gym, and keeping those skills honed throughout the year is part of it too.
When we're talking about your practices at the varsity level, how much of your practice time would you say is dedicated to mastering what your team does well versus scheming to the team that you have coming up to play?
Yeah, it changes through the year. As we get into our region now, practices are very different. We'll start to cut them down an hour and 15 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. I really probably do too much film with these guys, but I love film. Film never lies. Film helps players see who they are, what they need to work on. Defensively, that's a big part of what we do. Early in the year, you're obviously doing things different. You're having everybody compete against everybody, where now towards the end of the year you have your main guys working together versus a scout team versus the JV team, and that's part of it. So that is, it kind of evolves through the year.
I have a couple of questions that might be controversial. So first off is, how do you handle a locker room that might feel like it's slipping away from you?
It really comes down to a player-led teams are always better than coaches-led team. And so I think it comes down to the leadership has to be developed prior sometimes to that season. And then other times during the season, you're really fighting to keep that leadership and that culture. And that's the communication part. I think as a coach, I feel like I haven't always been great at communication, of making sure you have a good pulse of even some of the younger players. And you know, we have a coach on our staff that sends out, you know, he tries to send out this Google form asking some questions, a check-in of what was the highlight of your week, what was the low light, what are the things that you're struggling with or working on in basketball, and letting kids have a chance to have a voice. And obviously we try to have those conversations even after practice and before, but it's hard. It's hard to always get that in and have, you know, again, that pulse on how they're feeling.
Doug, I would have loved to play for you because we've been to a number of your games, right? A fun team to come follow, fun team to come watch. You are definitely an animated and excited coach. And I'm sure your players feed off that. There's no way you leave a game without feeling burned out yourself. You're into the game, and I can appreciate that as a player. That's really what a coach wants to see, or what a player wants to see, rather. But can you talk to us a little bit about your game day expectations or traditions that you have before your games?
Game day, I always use the phrase, and it comes from an old coach, Ingersoll at American Fork. You know, he would talk about the haze in the barn, you know, and some of my players had no idea what that meant. And, you know, it means that you've done the work. Now it's time to go and have the harvest of all the time that you've put in at the game. Game days are special. I always say this, the moments before games or the moments before an event are the greatest moments. I always like to kind of be in the locker room and just enjoy it, be with the assistant coaches or see how the players are handling it. Sometimes if I come out too early at a game, I get worked up or get distracted, but I like to kind of have a focus of, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? Game days are about, you know, fine-tuning some things and trying. I've made the mistake sometimes of giving the players too much information, and so there's a balance of, okay, here's the main 3 points that we need to kind of focus on both sides of the floor, and you try to get a feel of how, you know, the players, what is their mindset like. Sometimes I've had a player come to an assistant coach and will just say, man, I'm ready. And then I love that feedback because that's the kid I want to get in that game as soon as possible. So
There's no doubt, as being the number one ranked team in 6A, you're getting everybody's best shot or their biggest punch for sure right out of the gate. Is there anything fun that you do at Herriman High School, like everyone wears a shirt and tie, or maybe that's outdated, everyone wears matching sweats? Is there any kind of team camaraderie that way through the school day?
yeah, that they do that here. They're great about, hey, today we're wearing our polos. They're wearing their best dress, and I think that's awesome. You know, you want to stand out, but you want to stand up.
Yeah.
You want to be the players that are good examples in the classroom. And this is a special group where we went to an elementary school with some of these athletes. You know, our main guys, average GPA is probably it's about a 3.8.
Wow.
I've got guys that are 4.0 kids that we run a lot of plays because we can. We can add a play the day before and they can pick those things up. But they're the traditions and things that they do. We do some Thursday night team dinners, and we've been really fortunate this year to have some great former players. You know, a Randy Reed, Russ Larson. We've had a Jimmy DeGraffenried, a Big Sky Player of the Year, and come and just give some insight of what was their experience like. They share some stories of recruiting with Shaquille O'Neal at North Carolina, and for them to hear these guys who have been successful in life, who have been successful, you know, at all different levels, you know, we feel like they can pick up a few things from them, and it's been pretty special to hear from them.
Let's talk about the games as well. And as we've observed you and your team and your coaching, from my perspective, it seems like you focus so much on teaching your kids throughout the game. It's a loud environment, so there's yelling and your voice probably goes. But there are moments where it seems like you're really defending your players to the referees, but I've never seen you badger referees. So what is your interaction or your philosophy around how to interact with referees?
Yeah, I always tell parents at the beginning of the year, look, I'm going to be on the refs probably 5% of the time. The other 95%, I'm going to really be teaching and coaching. I'm looking for an advantage where we have a mismatch. I love the chess part of the game. I love looking for, okay, who did they sub out? Who do we want to get in next? What's our next play? I mean, that's kind of my mindset. And I just feel like the refs, sometimes I have our players go ref youth games so they experience how hard it is. They're going to miss calls. I mean, sometimes you have to win by 15 to win by 2. And that's the reality is this is, you get into a state tournament, you got to match the physicality and toughness, and no one's going to hand you anything in a state tournament. So that's my approach. I feel like sometimes if I'm always on them, now it gives maybe a player a chance to lose his focus. And so we're preaching, we need you to be next play. We're trying to earn calls in the fourth quarter. And if you don't handle your business in that first half, if you're making faces and you're talking to refs, how are you going to get that 50-50 call in the last 2 minutes when we need that call? And so that's kind of my approach to it, and it's just kind of who I am.
Can you talk to us a little bit, though, about winning on the road versus winning at home? How much more difficult is it to play in a hostile environment? And do you have any examples that you can think of that have been really exceptionally difficult?
Well, I think, it's fun, the rivalry games. It's very unique here in this area where it seems like players know kids from every high school. They've been on different teams with them. So there's a friendly rivalry, but there's also some tough rivalries as well. And I think that's just, we always say in our locker room that pressure is a privilege. That's something that's always said before we go out. What a chance, what a great opportunity to go out and do this together. And to see players, I go back to last year at the Riverton game. It was a double overtime game, and I had a player that just had initially in the year struggled with sometimes his body language, but he came and he learned how to lead and bring guys together when it was hard, and to see them circle up when we've got to communicate when it's hard. That was one of the best experiences to watch a player. Malcolm Johnson, he's now playing football for Navy, and it's been fun to see his growth in terms of his leadership and the kind of person that he is. And those are the things in a hostile environment you get to see what guys are made of.
Yeah,
I've had to guard him, and he's a big boy. Would you be willing to draw up a play for us?
Sure.
I'm going to grab a camera and come over, and it'll be like I'm in the huddle, but I'm going to give you the situation first.
Okay.
So our team is down 3.
Okay.
We have the ball at half court, and we've got 4 seconds left, so we need a 3. And I want you to draw that out. So let me grab that camera.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to get my good passer here, and I happen to have maybe a 6'8" guy here. Maybe I have a 6'9" guy here. And I'm going to go, where's my 2? Okay, and then I'm going to have my 1 here. Actually, I'm going to put my three-point shooter. Actually, this year I'm fortunate. I have players at each position that can do this. But this is how it's going to look here. I saw this from the Lakers when they made this play. You have a passer here, and he's making a long pass into a 6'8" player on the other side as this guy kind of pushes his defender in a little bit. And then what happens here, it's kind of like a hammer play where this shooter, this could be your 1 or your 3, the ball's in the air, and now all of a sudden as he's coming off, the timing of this is pretty important. That pass is made to there for the tying 3 right there. So if he's not open, you have a good shooter here that spaces and has an opportunity to make the shot there too.
We better guarantee not to air that prior to
after
the
the
state
state
tournament. That's right.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that because I'm lucky enough to know you outside of this interview, and we got to play together down in Cedar City, and this situation happened, and you drew up a beautiful play, and in this case, I was the guy taking out the ball, and so I have been searching for your forgiveness for this ever since then because we needed a 3. You drew up this beautiful play, and the first option just popped wide open, and the play wasn't for him. And I just threw it to him, and he caught it in the corner, and he made the 3 in overtime. And so it's kind of one of those questions of, 1, how do you deal with the insubordinate player? And then 2, do the ends justify the means in certain instances?
Absolutely. It's about winning. At the end of the day, the players have to make the play. You can put them in a setting and you can drop the best play, but most coaches, good coaches, are going to do things and they're going to throw something different at you. So you are telling and teaching your players, sometimes this is great on the whiteboard, but you got to get to the free throw line. You got to go make the play, and that's what's fun, is to watch players have those chances to do it. You're a great player, and you made the right play.
Thanks. That's what I've needed to move forward with my life. I don't want to take too much of your time. You've been so generous with this. I do want to transition a little bit into the parents of players, though. So you have just the realities of high school basketball is you have overactive parents or over-involved parents. You have parents who are hard on their kids, parents who aren't involved at all. What kind of general advice would you want to give to parents of high school athletes?
That's being a parent. I've had young men that have been involved in athletics, and when I first moved up here, I kind of pushed my son into playing football because I wanted him to meet friends. I wanted him to do something hard. I wanted him to have the challenge of it. And, he chose not to play after this, his sophomore year, but it was a great experience to go and just experience that challenge. And so any advice I would say is let your player have the challenge and deal with the hard. And that's hard. I mean, being a parent it's a challenge because your emotions are almost 10 times more than what your kid is feeling. And your heart aches when theirs aches. You want to help them through it and navigate it and be okay to let them struggle. It's okay to, not talk about the game after it's happened. Let them bring it up later on and talk about it then. To me, I look at my parents and just to see them in the stands is a blessing, and to be able to just know that they're there, that's what matters. Parents, I know that they think the refs hear them and make calls according to what they say, but they don't. And I know there's a way, sometimes we just need to vent, but the reality is, it's the boys' experience. And I would always communicate with a coach if a player's struggling, mentally, if he's dealing with his emotional health. Those are important conversations that you have with coaches. But when it comes to, their role, when it comes to their different things that they would like to see, because every dad has a different starting lineup. Every dad has a different rotation that he would do. And it's okay to let that work itself out. I haven't met a coach that doesn't want to win. And so I do know that coaches are doing everything that they can to figure out how to win the game. And that's the beauty of this game is that growth and that progress with it. And sometimes, I've been in that position where I've sat on the bench and learned, and I took great pride in knowing that every day I went to practice, I was a part of that win because I helped that team prepare to beat Air Force. My goal was to run Air Force's plays better than Air Force. And when we had that win, that was something that, I know I was a part of it. And that's hard to instill into players all the time when maybe that role is different than what they had expected or hoped.
Coach, you're obviously a great coach and a phenomenal human being, caring about the boys and how they grow and mature, even beyond high school basketball. But I want to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you if you have a favorite line that you've ever put into a referee's ear during a game that still today might make you laugh.
I always laugh. I loved my former high school coach, and maybe it's I'm kind of getting to that point where I've coached a lot of years. Coach Eccles at American Fork, great coach, just a great mentor for me. He would always say, "It's been 35 years and I haven't seen a call that bad," and so I was, I thought, I'm going to try this. We're in this Florida tournament and there's a ref and he was not good, and so I brought out the 28 years I haven't seen a call that bad, and he said, "Well, I've been doing this for 32." So I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is not how this is supposed to work. So I don't know if it's a great line, but it was a line that I tried, and
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
It commands some respect, and you certainly deserve it. Do you have any coach-isms, any common phrases you repeat?
I bet you could ask my son some of the things, they've heard me say. Just those similar ones. Pressure is a privilege. Star in your role. Work while you wait. Those are things that, carry on into your life. Be the best teammate that you can be. Figure out what you do and do it to the best of your ability.
You had some players in another interview mention "eyes up, do the work." Is that something that's part of the school? Is that you? Like, where did that phrase come from, and what does it mean?
That comes from an organization called Especially for Athletes. Dustin Smith has started this organization. It's been going for quite a few years. He goes into schools, and they get lots of leaders involved to be the eyes, the ears of the school to help those students that are in need. It's just a program that I love that preaches principles of resiliency, learning how to seek to bless and not impress. Just a lot of different things that you just want your own kids to experience. And so that's something that not every school does it, but Dustin, he was just here recently and speaking to a group of our student athlete leaders. And that's what the message is about, is you talk about these things in your own program. Hopefully it spills over into your English class. It spills over into the hallway, where you're the warriors of the school. You're the ones that see there's a student that's struggling. And you're in what's called a spotlight. You get a small window of being that person that people recognize. Today's world in social media, the likes that kids get and all of these things is kind of a crazy phenomena. And so you can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And that's the goal with that program, is that they want players to be the ones that help somebody and buoy them up when they're struggling in a school.
And it seems like that's paid off for your team in the sense of we have internally our own rankings for student body, the fan base, and Herriman travels well. I mean, in your away games, we saw one where you have a guy dressed up as Moses and he parts the Red Sea. Everybody's wearing red and he parts the Red Sea.
And everybody knew exactly what to do.
And then we go to another game and one of these teams had 0 students in their student section. And so it seems like this program has developed a pretty good culture of not just the athletes, but the fans of your kids.
That's a goal. We do. We have a great student base, and we appreciate them because they're worth 10 points. I always tell them that it matters to have your support. And that's what we tell the players is, look, go support some other teams. Go to some other events in the school. This isn't just about you and what you guys are doing. This is about Herriman High School. And that's the goal, is you want them to know that just a chance to be a part of something that's bigger than you are. And that's what sports do. It gives a chance to learn that it's just not a one-on-one game. It's about using everybody, down to the end of the bench. They matter. We have a player this year that doesn't play a ton, but every time we run a scout offense, he knows the other team's plays as good as anybody, and he's like an assistant coach. And that's valuable to us. That helps us be prepared to win a close game down the stretch.
How has fundraising changed in your coaching career? Because it seems like, especially if you're traveling and you're doing all these things, how does fundraising boosters? What are you looking for in that regard?
Yeah, we have sometimes parents who would rather not fundraise, and they'll write out a check for everything that's costs. And yeah, AAU, sometimes it's, I always say, I'm just grateful your son's playing basketball and not cheerleading. I had a daughter that cheered, and I got that bill, and I was like, wait a minute, well, they're doing what? How many costumes? And but it's to be able to go to a Florida and have an experience there. It does cost a lot to go, and so we are grateful for the businesses, for the community that support our program, that allows these boys to have an experience where they can go and be together and learn how to win on the road. Those really matter in helping you have some success down the road. And we'll do different things where we'll do a golf fundraiser, we'll do banners and advertisements. Those are things that really help and support a program. So it's been different where, there's more online things that you can do in a program, and that's what you do, is you love to have that support from the community where they know that they're helping support a program.
I just remember going to Neighbors so much with Little Caesars punch cards and Domino's punch cards, and so I think the online version has helped a little bit with all of that. I haven't been a coach to your level in any way, shape, or form, but as a player who has been in the high school world and the realities of the teenage life, in my case, my parents got divorced when I was a junior. You have girlfriends, you have injuries, you have all of these things going on. I just want to express my appreciation as just an outside observer of watching you coach and interact with these kids, because it's such a formative time of life. We did have a question from the internet. So on our little podcast here, people can submit questions. And so I want to ask you this: of the perception was of a lot of the people that they talk to who have played high school basketball, they have a negative feeling about their time as a high school basketball player. And that could be because they underachieved. It could be because they didn't win the state tournament and there's only one team that does. It could have been because their coach or whatever else. What advice would you give, again, to players and parents of how to have the best experience in a high school environment, knowing that you might not end the season with a win?
I think, to me, relationships are more important than results. I go back to, I have a friend that when I went to St. George, I reconnected with an old friend, Rocky Price, and we played ninth grade basketball together. And that's a friendship that was built up from being on a team. And so to go back, and we became, it was fun to have that connection from a game of basketball. And that's what we always talk about that. And the guys that come back and talk to these guys, that's what they say. They don't say much about the records, the banners, and different things. It's the kids that you get to meet. And to me, if you go back and you look at who are you still staying in contact with on Facebook, or who's in your text message thread, it's usually those players that you got a chance to play some team, some sport at some time. And so it might be just your 9th and 10th grade year that you had that experience. But, to me, that's what's special about it.
Well, and I still, to this day, in talking with my dad, who's 71 years old, I still have dreams that I am in the dream. It's the start of my senior year, and I got another shot, knowing what I know now, to have the lights on, to have referees, to have cheerleaders, to have parents. And you keep saying pressure is a privilege. It's something that I miss, and it's harder as you get older. So hopefully these kids really appreciate it. And the one regret that I have from high school is the effort. It seems like you can't really coach effort, and that's where it kind of has to be within the player to do that. And as a player, that's my regret, is not giving enough effort. Whether I have 1 minute left, 1 year left, or a whole high school career ahead of me, effort is the thing that I think really would pay off for these kids.
Eric, just to piggyback on that, is a short time, right? These high school years, middle school years leading up to it, I mean, it's a very short time.
Yeah, the skill of, we always preach, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so when we talk about what you do in that English class, are you on the front row? Are you paying attention? Are you talking to your, are you that student? How you handle that business there, we're going to see it here on the court. And it really is something that is important, and what a great opportunity that they have to develop their skills.
Doug, we can't thank you enough. Are there any parting words you have, or is there anybody else that you think would benefit the youth and parents in having conversations like this, whether that's players or other coaches that you know personally?
I think it's just a message of being grateful for different opportunities in terms of, I think to go and your youth coaches, make sure that your players are telling those coaches thank you. I mean, that's a special thing they do. They put in a lot of time outside. They think about it at night. They watch YouTube videos on how to beat a 1-3-1 zone. They're doing those kind of things. And so I think that's an important message for youth players, coming up, because usually a grateful player is one that can handle challenges and adversity, and I think that's a message that I try to preach with my own boys, because their opportunities are small and the windows are small, but enjoy those opportunities that you get, and be grateful for the people that come into your life that influence you for good.
Doug, you're an amazing coach, and there's no doubt, Eric and I have talked about this many times, but just the amount of time and commitment that it takes to be a high-level high school basketball coach, be it with the underclassmen or your own team, or being at the school for all of the games on Tuesdays, all of the games on Fridays, the practices. It's amazing. And just from a fan point of view or an outsider view, we appreciate it and think you're doing a wonderful job.
We'll be following your team closely as you go into the state tournament. So,
I love it.
And we'll
Thank
be
you.
at some of those games too.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.